Picture a vibrant city where Willow, a radiant graduate, and Isaiah, a reclusive artist, cross paths through a moment of compassion. Their journey unfolds with warmth. A chance encounter at a cinema sparks a connection, deepened by shared dreams and a near tragedy that binds their hearts. As Isaiah faces duty and distance, a promise under starlit skies holds them together, leading to a reunion beneath cherry blossoms, where love triumphs over time. This tale is a gentle reminder that even the smallest gestures can bloom into something extraordinary. If this resonates, hit that subscribe button and share where you're listening from in the comments. Maybe a cozy bed or a quiet corner. What secrets will Willow and Isaiah uncover? Stay until the end to find out, and let's drift into this story together. The city awoke under a canopy of spring, its streets dappled with sunlight filtering through blooming trees. Petals drifted like soft promises, carried on a breeze that whispered of new beginnings. Willow Everett stood at the heart of this vibrancy, her long black hair catching the light as she adjusted the tassel on her graduation cap. At 22, her emerald eyes sparkled with the triumph of earning her economics degree, a milestone that felt like the first brushstroke on a canvas of dreams. She was striking, not just in her graceful features, but in the quiet warmth that drew others to her, like moths to a gentle flame. Her laughter mingled with the chatter of her classmates, their voices a symphony of youth and ambition. The ceremony had been a blur of speeches and applause, but now, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Willow and her friends sought to celebrate. They chose the city's grandest cinema, a place where neon lights buzzed and the air thrummed with anticipation. The lobby was a kaleidoscope of motion, families, couples, and groups of friends weaving through, their excitement palpable. Willow's friend Clara nudged her, pointing to a poster for a new romantic comedy. "Perfect for tonight," Clara said, her grin infectious. Willow nodded, her heart light, ready to lose herself in laughter and popcorn. But as they approached the ticket counter, a ripple of discord cut through the crowd's hum. At the front of the line stood an older woman, her gray hair loosely tied in a bun, her hands trembling as she fumbled with her phone. The screen glowed stubbornly, refusing to yield the digital ticket she needed. Her brow furrowed, and a faint flush of embarrassment crept across her cheeks. The line behind her swelled, and impatience festered like a gathering storm. "Come on, lady. Some of us have places to be," a man in a crisp suit barked, his voice sharp enough to slice through the din. A woman nearby rolled her eyes, muttering, "She's holding everyone up." The words were knives, each one landing with a quiet cruelty that made the older woman flinch. She glanced back, her eyes apologetic, but the crowd's irritation only grew, a chorus of sighs and whispered complaints. Willow's chest tightened. She saw not just the woman's struggle, but the weight of the moment, the way judgment stripped away dignity. Without a second thought, she stepped forward, slipping past Clara, who raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me," Willow said, her voice soft but carrying a steadiness that hushed the grumbling. She knelt beside the woman, her smile a beacon in the chaos. "Let me help you with that." The woman looked up, startled, her hazel eyes clouded with uncertainty. "Oh, I don't want to trouble you," she said, her voice fragile but kind, like the rustle of old pages. "It's no trouble at all," Willow replied, her fingers already reaching for the phone. She navigated the app with ease, her calm presence a counterpoint to the crowd's restlessness. Within moments, the ticket barcode flashed on the screen, and the scanner beeped its approval. The woman's shoulders sagged with relief, a small, grateful smile breaking through her worry. "You're a lifesaver," she said, her voice warmer now, as if the weight of the crowd's scorn had lifted. "I'm Eleanor. I don't usually come to places like this, but I thought I'd treat myself." Willow handed back the phone, her smile mirroring Eleanor's. I'm Willow, and I'm glad you're here. Everyone deserves a night at the movies." The words were simple, but they carried a sincerity that made Eleanor's eyes soften. The line began to move again, the tension dissolving like mist. But Eleanor wasn't ready to let the moment pass. "Please," she said, gesturing toward the concession stand. "Let me buy you something, popcorn, a drink. It's the least I can do." Willow hesitated, glancing at her friends, who were now chatting among themselves. Clara gave her a playful thumbs up, and Willow relented. "Only if you'll share it with me," she said, her tone teasing but genuine. They stood at the counter, Eleanor insisting on a large bucket of popcorn and 2 sodas. As they waited, they talked. Small things at first. About the movie. The city's spring charm. Eleanor's voice grew steadier, her stories hinting at a life rich with experience, though tempered by solitude. Willow listened, her curiosity piqued by the woman's quiet strength. When their order arrived, they parted with a warmth that felt like the start of something unspoken. "Willow!" Eleanor called as they headed toward their theaters. "I run a bookstore just down the street, Evergreen Books. Come by sometime." "I'd love to thank you properly." Willow turned, her smile bright. "I will," she promised, tucking the name of the bookstore into her memory like a pressed flower. As she rejoined her friends, Clara nudged her again. "Making friends with strangers now?" she teased. Willow laughed, but her thoughts lingered on Eleanor, on the way a small act could shift the air, could turn a moment of cruelty into one of connection. She settled into her seat, the movie's opening credits rolling, but her mind wandered to the bookstore, to the possibility of stories waiting beyond its doors. Outside, the city pulsed on, its lights flickering like stars against the dusk. Willow couldn't know it yet, but her kindness had set a wheel in motion, one that would draw her into a world of art, love, and promises kept under cherry blossoms. For now, she was just a young woman, her heart open, her future unwritten, stepping into a story that would change everything. The morning after the cinema, Willow woke with the scent of spring still clinging to her thoughts. The memory of Eleanor's grateful smile lingered, a quiet note in the symphony of her graduation day. Curiosity tugged at her, and by noon, she found herself walking down a sun-dappled street toward Evergreen Books. The bookstore's sign swung gently in the breeze, its letters carved in elegant script, promising stories within. Willow pushed open the door, a bell chiming softly, and stepped into a world of warmth and whispers. Shelves towered with leather-bound volumes, their spines worn by loving hands, and the air carried the musky sweetness of aged paper. She wandered the aisles, her fingers grazing the books as if they might speak. The quiet was a balm after the chaos of the previous evening, and she lost herself in the titles: poetry, art, forgotten novels. Unseen, behind a curtained doorway to the back room, Isaiah Hawthorne paused mid-stroke, his paintbrush hovering over a canvas. At 25, he was a paradox, a painter whose anonymous works commanded thousands at galleries, yet who shunned fame for solitude. His jet-black hair fell messily over hazel eyes that saw the world in shades of longing. His faded jacket and paint-splattered jeans belied a face that could stop hearts, though he carried himself with the unassuming grace of one who preferred shadows to spotlights. The bell's chime had drawn his attention, and now, peering through the curtain's gap, he saw her, Willow, her dark hair catching the light like a raven's wing, her presence a quiet melody in the store's stillness. She traced a book's spine with care, and Isaiah's breath caught. There was something in her gentleness, her unguarded curiosity, that stirred a spark he hadn't known he carried. His mother, Eleanor, stacking books at the counter, caught his gaze and followed it to Willow. A knowing smile curved her lips. "That's the girl from the cinema," she whispered, her voice a conspirator's hush. The one who helped me. She's special, Isaiah. He nodded, his throat tight. Special didn't begin to cover it. But words were not his medium. His truths lived in color and line, in the silent language of his art. Eleanor, ever the orchestrator, saw the flicker in her son's eyes and seized the moment. She plucked a stack of rare art books from a shelf, volumes on Impressionism, Renaissance sketches, and modernist musings, and pressed them into Isaiah's hands. "Take these to her," she urged, her tone brooking no argument. "Tell her they're a gift from the store." Isaiah hesitated, his pulse quickening. He was no stranger to beauty, having painted it countless times. But this was different, alive, unpredictable. Steeling himself, he stepped into the main room, the books a shield against his nerves. Willow, absorbed in a poetry collection, didn't notice him at first. He cleared his throat, his voice low and warm, like embers in a hearth. "Excuse me, my mother Eleanor. Thought you might like these." Willow looked up, startled, and met his gaze. His eyes held a depth that made her pause, as if they saw not just her, but the dream she carried. The books he offered were beautiful, their covers embossed with gold. "Oh, these are incredible," she said, her voice bright, but tinged with protest. "But it's too much. I can't just—" Thank you," Isaiah cut in, his shy smile disarming. "For helping her last night. She says you're a kindred spirit." The words felt clumsy, but Willow's answering smile eased the knot in his chest. They stood there, the books a bridge between them, and began to talk. It started with the volumes. Willow's love for art history, Isaiah's quiet admission that he dabbled in painting. But soon, the conversation wandered to the city's hidden corners, to the way spring made everything feel possible. Isaiah found himself laughing, a sound rare enough to surprise him, as Willow recounted a disastrous attempt at sketching in college. Her ease, her lack of pretense, was a revelation to a man who guarded his world so fiercely. Eleanor watched from the counter, her heart swelling. She'd seen Isaiah retreat from connection too often, his art a refuge from a world that demanded too much. But here, with Willow, he was present, alive. She busied herself with receipts, giving them space, but her mind was already spinning plans. As the afternoon waned, Willow glanced at her watch, regret flickering in her eyes. "I should go," she said, clutching the books. "But thank you for these and the company." She hesitated, then added, "Maybe I'll come back. This place feels like a secret I want to keep." Isaiah's heart lifted. "It's always here," he said, and the words carried more weight than he intended. As she left, the bell chiming behind her, he stood rooted, the memory of her smile seared into him. He returned to his canvas, but his brush moved differently now, tracing lines that echoed her grace. Outside, Willow walked home, the books heavy in her arms, but her steps light. She didn't know why the encounter felt significant, why the artist's quiet intensity lingered. But as the city glowed in the twilight, she felt the stirrings of something new. A story just beginning, its pages blank but brimming with promise. The city slipped into summer's embrace, its streets alive with the hum of cicadas and the glow of long evenings. Willow found herself returning to evergreen books, drawn not just by the allure of its shelves, but by the memory of Isaiah's quiet smile. Their first meeting had left an imprint, a spark that flickered in her thoughts as she navigated her new job at an economics firm. The work was demanding, filled with spreadsheets and forecasts, but it was the bookstore's warmth that felt like home. Isaiah, too, felt the pull. Since Willow's visit, his paintings had taken on a new vibrancy, as if her presence had unlocked a hidden palette. He worked late in the back room, his brush dancing across canvases, but his mind often wandered to her laughter, her curiosity. Eleanor, ever the architect of fate, noticed the change in her son. His usual solitude had softened, replaced by a restlessness that surfaced whenever Willow's name was mentioned. She seized every opportunity to nudge them closer, her matchmaking as subtle as a painter's lightest stroke. One humid afternoon, Willow pushed open the bookstore's door. The bells chime, a familiar greeting. She carried a small paper bag, a gift of homemade lemon cookies from her mother, Claire. "For Eleanor," she said, spotting Isaiah at the counter, his sleeves rolled up, a streak of blue paint on his forearm. His eyes lit up, and Willow felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the summer heat. "Mom's in the back," he said, taking the bag, "but I'll make sure she gets these. She'll be thrilled." He paused, then added, "You've got a habit of brightening her day." Willow laughed, brushing a strand of dark hair behind her ear. "It's mutual. This place is my escape." Their conversation flowed effortlessly, drifting from books to the city's summer festivals. When Eleanor emerged, her eyes twinkled at the sight of them. "Willow, dear, you must join our book club tomorrow evening," she insisted. "We're discussing a poetry collection, perfect for you." Willow hesitated, her schedule tight, but Isaiah's hopeful glance tipped the scale. "I'll be there," she promised, her heart lifting at the thought of another evening in their company. The book club was a revelation. Held in the bookstore's cozy nook, surrounded by flickering candles, it drew a small group of dreamers who dissected verses with passion. Willow found herself seated beside Isaiah, their knees brushing as they debated the imagery of a love sonnet. His insights were sharp, his voice low but fervent, and Willow felt a thrill at the way his thoughts mirrored her own. When she spoke, he listened with an intensity that made her feel seen, truly seen, for the first time in ages. Afterward, as the others drifted away, Isaiah offered to walk her home. The night was soft, the stars peeking through a velvet sky. They strolled through quiet streets, their steps unhurried, their conversation a tapestry of dreams and confessions. Willow shared her hopes of making a difference through her work, of finding purpose beyond numbers. Isaiah, usually guarded, spoke of his art, not the accolades it earned, but the way it let him capture fleeting moments of truth. "You make it sound alive," Willow said, pausing under a street lamp's glow. "Like your paintings could breathe." Isaiah's smile was shy, almost vulnerable. "They do sometimes, when I get it right." He looked at her, and for a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them, charged with unspoken possibility. Summer bled into autumn, and their winter's chill had settled over the city, cloaking its streets in frost and shadow. The vibrant hues of autumn had faded, replaced by the stark beauty of bare branches against a steel gray sky. Willow Everett, now settled into her role at the economics firm, found solace in routine, but her heart wandered to the moments spent with Isaiah Hawthorne. Their walks through falling leaves, their debates over poetry at Eleanor's book club, had woven a delicate thread between them, one that grew stronger with each shared glance, each brush of hands. The bookstore remained their haven, a place where time slowed and the world felt softer. Isaiah, too, was changed. His paintings, once solitary confessions, now pulsed with a warmth that mirrored Willow's presence. He sketched her in secret, her profile against a sunset, her laughter caught in a fleeting stroke. Yet he held back, his shyness a barrier he longed to cross. Eleanor, ever watchful, saw the unspoken love blooming and nudged them gently, her invitations to book club or impromptu coffee breaks ensuring their paths intertwined. On a particularly bitter evening, Willow sat alone in her small apartment, a coal heater casting a faint glow. She was buried in work, papers strewn across her desk, her eyes heavy from late nights. The heater's warmth was a comfort against the icy drafts seeping through the windows, but exhaustion tugged at her. She leaned back, intending to rest for just a moment, and slipped into a dreamless sleep, unaware of the silent menace gathering in the room. Carbon monoxide, odorless and deadly, curled through the air, seeping into her lungs with every shallow breath. Across town, Claire, Willow's mother, decided to surprise her daughter with a visit. She bundled up against the cold, her scarf tight, and made her way to Willow's apartment, a tin of homemade soup in hand. The streets were quiet. The city hushed under winter's weight. When she reached the building, she climbed the stairs, her knock sharp against the door. No answer. Frowning, she knocked again, louder, her unease growing. She tried the handle, and the door, left unlocked, creaked open. The air inside was stifling, heavy, with an unnatural stillness. Claire's eyes widened as she saw Willow slumped over her desk, her face pale, her lips tinged blue. "Willow!" she cried, rushing forward. She shook her daughter, but Willow didn't stir. Panic clawed at Claire's chest, her hands trembling as she fumbled for her phone, only to realize it was dead. "No, no, no," she whispered, her voice breaking. She shouted for help, her cries echoing in the empty hallway. But the building was silent. By a twist of fate, Isaiah was nearby. He'd been at the bookstore, restless, and decided to drop off a book Eleanor had insisted Willow would love, a collection of love letters from artists. The winter air bit at his skin as he approached Willow's building, the book tucked under his arm. He was halfway up the stairs when Claire's desperate cries reached him, sharp and raw. His heart lurched, and he sprinted the rest of the way, bursting into the apartment. The scene hit him like a blow. Willow, motionless, Claire's tear-streaked face. "She won't wake up," Claire sobbed, her hands clutching Willow's shoulders. Isaiah's mind raced, his artist's eye catching the faint haze in the air, the heater's ominous glow. Carbon monoxide. He'd read about it once, its silent lethality. Without a word, he crossed the room, his boots heavy on the floor, and scooped Willow into his arms. Her weight was slight, her body limp, and fear gripped him like a vice. "Open the windows!" he shouted to Claire as he carried Willow toward the door. Claire, shaking, obeyed, throwing open every pane to let the frigid air flood in. Isaiah rushed down the stairs, Willow cradled against his chest, her dark hair spilling over his arm. The cold bit at his face, but he barely felt it, his focus singular. Get her to safety. On the street, he laid her gently on the ground, checking her pulse. It was faint, but there, a fragile thread. He pulled out his phone, his fingers clumsy with adrenaline, and dialed for an ambulance, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. Minutes stretched into eternity as he knelt beside her, rubbing her hands, willing warmth back into her. "Come on, Willow," he murmured, his breath visible in the icy air. "Stay with me." Claire hovered nearby, her sobs quieting into helpless whispers. When the ambulance's siren pierced the night, relief washed over Isaiah, though fear still clung to him. At the hospital, doctors moved swiftly, oxygen flooding Willow's system. Isaiah and Claire waited in the sterile hallway, the silence between them heavy. A doctor emerged, her expression calm. "She's stable," she said. "You got her out just in time, another few minutes and—" She didn't finish, but the weight of her words settled on them. Claire clutched Isaiah's arm, tears streaming. "You saved her," she whispered, her voice raw. Isaiah nodded, his throat tight, but his eyes were on the door to Willow's room. When they were allowed in, he saw her pale, but breathing, her emerald eyes fluttering open. She met his gaze, and a weak smile curved her lips. "Isaiah," she murmured, her voice a fragile thread. "Thank you." He took her hand, his trembling. "I'm just glad you're okay," he said, and in that moment, something shifted. A bond forged in the crucible of fear, a promise unspoken but felt. The winter night stretched on, but within the hospital's walls, a new warmth took root, one that would carry them forward. The hospital room's sterile glow faded into memory as spring returned. painting the city in soft pinks and greens. Willow Everett emerged from her brush with death stronger, her emerald eyes carrying a new clarity. The night Isaiah Hawthorne had carried her from danger had shifted something irrevocable between them, a bond sealed not just by gratitude but by a quiet, unspoken love. Their moments together grew more frequent, shared coffees at Evergreen Books, late-night talks under the bookstore's warm lamplight. Willow, emboldened by her survival, saw past Isaiah's scruffy exterior to the brilliance within, urging him to embrace his talent. He, in turn, found in her a muse, his paintings now alive with her spirit. Isaiah traded his faded jackets for sharper attire, his confidence blossoming under Willow's encouragement. She became his mirror, reflecting the artist he could be, while he showed her a world of beauty beyond her spreadsheets. Nights spent sketching by the river, her laughter mingling with the water's murmur. Yet, a shadow loomed. Isaiah's mandatory military service, a 2-year commitment, was no longer a distant threat, but an imminent reality. The date of his departure crept closer, a storm cloud on their horizon. On the eve of his enlistment, the city lay under a velvet sky, stars piercing the darkness like scattered diamonds. Isaiah had asked Willow to meet him at a quiet hill overlooking the city, a place they'd discovered during one of their walks. She arrived, her dark hair loose, catching the moonlight as she climbed the path. Isaiah stood waiting, his silhouette sharp against the night, a canvas tucked under his arm. His hazel eyes, usually guarded, were raw with emotion, and Willow's heart quickened at the sight. "I needed to see you here," he said, his voice low, carrying the weight of the moment. "Before I go." He gestured to the city below, its lights twinkling like a reflection of the stars. "This place, it's where I feel closest to you, even when everything else feels far away." Willow stepped closer, her breath visible in the cool air. "I don't want to think about you being far away," she admitted, her voice trembling. The thought of his absence was a physical ache, a void she couldn't yet fathom. Isaiah's hand found hers, his touch warm and steady. "I've been trying to find the right way to say this," he began, his words careful, as if painting them onto the night. "You've changed everything, Willow. The way I see the world, the way I see myself. I'm not good with words, but I need you to know what you mean to me." He lifted the canvas, unveiling it with a reverence that made her breath catch. It was a portrait of her, rendered in vibrant hues, her eyes alive with dreams, her smile a beacon against a backdrop of starlit skies. Every brushstroke was a confession, a testament to the way he saw her, radiant, unbreakable, eternal. Willow's eyes welled, her fingers tracing the edges of the painting. "Isaiah," she whispered, "it's beautiful. It's me, but more." "It's how I see you," he said, his voice thick. "And it's my promise. I'll come back, Willow. No matter what this service throws at me, I'll find my way back to you." The words struck her like a chord, resonating deep within. She looked at him, his face illuminated by starlight, and saw not just the artist but the man who'd risked everything to save her. "I'll wait," she said, her voice steady despite the tears spilling down her cheeks. "I'll be here, Isaiah. But you have to promise to stay safe. Promise me you'll come back whole." He nodded, his throat tight. "I promise," he said, and the words were a vow etched into the night. He stepped closer, and she met him halfway, their lips finding each other in a kiss that was both tender and fierce. It was a sealing of their bond, a defiance of the distance that awaited. The stars above bore witness, their light a silent blessing on the lovers below. They sat together on the hill, the canvas between them, talking until the first hints of dawn streaked the sky. Isaiah shared stories of his childhood, of the mother who'd taught him to see beauty in the ordinary. Willow spoke of her fears, her dreams, the life she hoped to build. As the city stirred below, they held each other, the weight of his departure tempered by the strength of their promise. When they parted, Willow clutched the portrait, its weight a tangible piece of him. Isaiah watched her go, her figure fading down the hill, and felt a resolve settle in his bones. The military awaited, with its trials and uncertainties, but he carried her with him, in every stroke of his sketchbook, in every beat of his heart. Willow returned home, the painting a beacon in her small apartment. She hung it above her desk, where it caught the morning light, a reminder of the man who'd seen her soul and vowed to return. As she faced the days ahead, her career demanding her focus, she held fast to their promise, knowing that love, like the stars, could endure even the longest nights. The city bloomed anew as spring unfurled its petals, 2 years after Isaiah Hawthorne's departure. Willow Everett had carried his promise like a talisman, her heart tethered to the portrait he'd painted, a vision of her under starlit skies. The years apart had tested her, each letter from Isaiah a lifeline through the grind of her economics career. She'd risen in her firm, her compassion shaping policies that aided the underserved, but her nights were spent tracing his words, dreaming of the day he'd return. Now, that day had come. Willow stood beneath a canopy of cherry blossoms, their delicate pink petals drifting like soft snow. The hill, where they'd made their vow, was alive with color, the air sweet with promise. Her dark hair danced in the breeze, her emerald eyes scanning the path below. Her heart pounded, a rhythm of hope and fear. What if the years had changed him? What if their love, so fierce in memory, faltered in reality? Then she saw him, Isaiah, striding up the hill, his silhouette sharper, hardened by service but unmistakably hers. His black hair was cropped shorter, his hazel eyes burning with the same intensity that had first captivated her. He carried a small sketchbook, its edges worn, a testament to the art that had kept him grounded. When their eyes met, the world stilled. Willow ran, her breath catching, and he met her halfway, his arms enveloping her as petals rained down. "You're here," she whispered, her voice breaking, her face pressed against his chest. "I promised I would be," Isaiah said, his voice rough with emotion. He held her tightly, as if to anchor himself after years adrift. They sank to the grass, hands entwined, the blossoms a soft curtain around them. Words tumbled out, stories of his training, the sketches he'd made of her in stolen moments, her triumphs at work, the quiet nights spent clutching his portrait. Laughter mingled with tears, the weight of their separation dissolving in the warmth of reunion. A year later, under those same cherry blossom trees, Willow and Isaiah stood hand in hand, their vows ready to be spoken. The ceremony was simple, a gathering of those who'd witnessed their journey. Eleanor, her gray hair adorned with a blossom, beamed with pride. Her bookstore the spark that had ignited their love. Claire, Willow's mother, wiped tears, her gratitude for Isaiah's heroism undimmed. The venue was a tapestry of Isaiah's art, canvases of starlit nights and blooming springs, each one a chapter of their story. Willow, in a flowing dress that caught the light, was radiant, her smile a mirror of the girl in Isaiah's portrait. He, in a tailored suit, looked every inch the artist, his eyes never leaving her. As they exchanged rings, Isaiah's voice was steady, each word a brushstroke. "Willow, you're my light, my reason. I vow to love you through every season, to paint our life with you." Willow's eyes shimmered as she replied, "Isaiah, you saw me when I didn't see myself. I vow to walk beside you always, wherever our path leads." Their kiss was a seal, met with cheers and a shower of petals, the blossoms a blessing on their union. Life after the wedding unfolded like a canvas, rich with color and depth. Isaiah's art gained quiet acclaim, his once anonymous works now bearing his name, though he remained humble, painting for love rather than fame. Willow's career flourished, her projects transforming communities, her heart guiding her work. Together, they reimagined Evergreen Books, turning it into a community hub where artists and dreamers gathered. Book clubs became art workshops, poetry readings paired with live sketches, the store a beacon of creativity and kindness. Eleanor, now a silent partner, watched her son and daughter-in-law with a contentment that softened her years. She spent her days tending the shop's garden, where cherry blossoms were planted in honor of their wedding. Claire, too, found joy in their happiness, often joining them for Sunday dinners, filled with laughter and stories. The city, once just a backdrop, became their canvas, its streets alive with their shared dreams. Each spring, Willow and Isaiah returned to the hill, their hands entwined as they watched the blossoms fall. They spoke of the future, of children they might raise, of art and impact they'd create together. The portrait Isaiah had painted hung in their home, a reminder of the promise that had carried them through. Its colors never faded, just as their love grew deeper. Rooted in the moment, Willow had helped a stranger at a cinema, unaware it would lead her here. As the sun set on one such spring evening, Isaiah pulled Willow close, her head resting against his shoulder. "Do you ever think," he murmured, "how one small choice changed everything?" Willow smiled, her eyes on the blossoms. "Every day," she said, "and I'd make it again 1,000 times." They stood in silence, the city glowing below, their love a quiet force that had reshaped their world. The cherry blossoms fell, each petal a whisper of forever, carrying their story into the endless spring. And so, this story draws to a close, leaving us with the warmth of Willow and Isaiah's love, born from a single act of kindness. What did their journey stir in you? Did it remind you of a moment when a small gesture changed everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your reflections and where you're listening from tonight. Your stories keep this space alive. Thank you for joining me, for letting these tales cradle you before sleep. Until our next story, under new stars and new dreams, rest well, and I'll meet you here again soon.